That was great, huh? That was a lot of fun. How do you feel? You've seen it a million times.
I love it.
You love it, but honestly, also you're like, I can't ever watch this again, right?
I prefer to watch other things too.
How involved were you in the editing? Because this is incredibly well edited. I love the way it's put together, and I'll just be the first to say, it's there's such a smart and compelling sense of humor throughout this entire narrative that it's clear you're a voice as a director. And I'm curious, is this literally the first thing you've directed?
Yeah. You definitely are sort of the story is happening kind of through my eyes. I don't know. I feel a little bit bad that that's the case because there's like a million different ways you could probably tell this story. And so, why should it be from my point of view? But
It's a
it
typical
is.
creator's insecurity. I'd say walk it off. Well, because that really is the thing. When you have a story that can be compelling, it's often difficult to translate it to an audience. And so through a director's POV or a writer's POV, that really becomes the format through which you can share this large idea with people. And so don't shy away from being passionate about a subject and then being the mouthpiece or the translator of it for an audience. You did an incredible job. I thought this was so, and I know the Automat in real life. Like I grew up in Philadelphia and New York. So I remember, and even watching it, I was like, oh, right. Horn and Hard Art, that was the thing, and it was a real brand, like a power brand in food and quality.
You went there?
I went to the Automat in New York, and I was trying to remember because when they called out the locations, the around 35th was the one that felt like the more familiar one. My grandma had a place right on Pearl Street across from the South Street Seaport, and she was there the whole time I was a kid. So New York is like in me. My granddad's from Brooklyn. New York is like in me. And so I remembered all of that, and especially the transition. And then when that Burger King, the one on 42nd Street became a Burger King, I remembered that like space age kind of neon thing. It's a trip watching something like this, something so critical to culture, something that is such an undeniably zeitgeist experience, just completely disappear. What Why? What were you interested in? How did you know about any of this? What compelled you to put all this time and effort and research? And clearly, you've been at it for a while because you had Carl Reiner and Ruth Bader Ginsburg in it. So this has obviously been going on for a while. What drew you to this subject?
Well, I think I got really lucky because when I went into this, it wasn't necessarily for the reasons that would make sense. You'd make this film because this is a historically important place that has a lot of social significance, but I was doing it because I thought, cafeterias were cool and I liked that this was a really glitzy restaurant that was in a lot of old Hollywood movies. And I liked that I went to the New York Public Library and the whole company collection is there. And it was just so cool. And I was, like 20 and I just thought this would be a nice
This
thing
was
to
earlier
do.
this month.
I I really lucked out with the subject matter. Why I really had no idea it was going to, be such a special thing.
It's so it's just so interesting because the automat as a subject crosses so many innovations in like consumer experience, the food experience, and especially coming out of the times when it did, when the concept of food scarcity was on everybody's minds. It lived through all these different zeitgeist moments of trying to tell human beings post the Second World War how to survive and overcome this global national trauma. And formats like shared food experiences, the offering of a dignified eating experience, and the concept of it. It's so New York that everybody's on the same level. Like I grew up on the subways and in all these places where you're just New York. Like it makes you the most human being you can be. There's no everyone has got to share this space. Are you cool or are you an asshole? That is New York in a nutshell. And the automat, like, can you hang or are you a jerk? And the automat is such a pure expression of that. I want to talk about the music though. The original score. Were you able to get an orchestra to do that live?
So once Mel became involved, he saw like the first 10 minutes of the movie and he really liked it and he asked what else he could do to support the film. And I had to think of something really quick to ask for because he was, feeling very generous in that moment. And so I asked for this song. And originally I proposed to him that I have the song written and all he had to do was show up at a studio and sing it. And he said, okay, sure. But he called me back and he said, I actually have written something. And he started singing to me over the phone. And so, at this moment, things started to really develop. I had found out that while I was living in Seattle at this time, but my neighbor was Hummy Man, who composed Mel's last two films, Robin Hood Men in Tights and Dracula Dead and Loving It, which is such a small world. And so I asked Hummy, would you write a score, an orchestral score for the film that's kind of in the vibe of an old Hollywood movie, which is unusual for a documentary. But because there's so many movies within the movie, I thought that would be a really nice sound and something different. And so Mel and Hummy worked together on the song, and Hummy worked on the score, and we have 35 musicians, and it's a bit odd for a historical documentary. But
It's unusual, but
it was part of my vision.
It's it's really it's really beautiful, and it helps capture the sentiment, like the spirit of this thing, and learning the history of it and the founder's intent of making something that felt sophisticated, making something that felt clean and auspicious, and innovation and service in the speed and efficiency of it, but not a compromise in its vision of what a modern eatery should be. Coming into the very early 1900s, everyone had opinions. It's still like 20 years before the World's Fair or any of these hypothesis about a space-aged future, and you've got a level of innovation that feels so modern and yet puts a respect around the experience of equalizing the diner experience. I think it's really cool.
One of my favorite things about the film is how it portrays a business that has a positive impact on people's lives, and still for many years it made a ton of money, and yet it did something really positive, which might be, it seems like a simple message, but I think that especially right now it's an important one, that we can, make money, or that we should aspire to do so, but also to do good by our customers.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, especially when so many laws have shifted towards protecting unions or utility workers in any of these large companies, and instead they seem to be promoting the growth of the wealth of the individual billionaires to the point where they can have, humans as widgets. It is a wonderful message to put out, that you don't have to compromise the human aspect of your company just to be successful.
I like to think of the film as a conversation starter.
Mm.
Yeah. I think I've done quite a few of these Q&As now, and
Oh,
really
how am I doing?
every time the I just feel like there's always a different conversation to be had, and that people take away different things from the film, and I'm really excited about that. I think it's thought provoking, even though it's a historical documentary about a restaurant.
Well, that's why I started with your POV about it. Like it's tough, especially when you're like any kind of artist. You sort of have this built-in loathing of actual applause. Like I don't know about you, but I've done live theater, and it's always just a little bit awkward if they applaud. It kind of feels self-aggrandizing. But I had another actor talk to me about a curtain call at one point, shake me for being like so coy with what was what he called it. And I was like, it makes me uncomfortable. And he's like, that's not for you. The applause is for them. The audience has spent this time coming along this ride with you, feeling the emotion that you conveyed to them, understanding the story, sharing the experience that you were relating. This is the only way they know how to express it. Don't be a dick. And I was like,
I'll never think of applause in the same way.
it helped me. It helped me a
great.
lot because I love creating the thing, and it's always very uncomfortable to get any kind of compliments because it's not really what I'm in it for. But I learned a little bit of grace with allowing people whatever their expression was, without trying to take it personally. You know.
Yeah, I guess now that I've achieved applause, I'm waiting for lingerie and flowers to come flying at me next time. All right, applause.
Fair
check.
enough. Yeah, Tom Jones pioneered all that. It's like maybe you can get into whatever. The soliciting of other items. The problem is when you start encouraging your audience to throw stuff at you, you're just a moment away from like rotten vegetables or some other kind of thing. I really enjoyed this film. Do you feel comfortable opening the floor if anybody else has any questions?
I'd love that.
Okay. What do you think, gang? Who's got a question? Oh, I see a hand in the back. Can I Maury Povich this?
All
or
right.
is it still
Seth Green is
Donahue was the guy
bringing
on
you
his feet. That's
the
probably way
microphone.
pre. Oh, that actually works. Yeah, but now that I'm all the way up here. Got a question from the woman in the back. Let's hear.
I didn't move with you. I'm just curious, how did you know to go to RBG or Colin Powell? Like, how did you know that they had Automat experiences? Was it just a hunch, or did you hear from someone?
So, RBG was really adorable in the documentary The Sturgeon Queens about Rustin Daughters. And I just happened to be watching that film. I saw her and I got the idea. Well, if she ate at Rustin Daughters, she probably also ate at the Automat. I'm also wondering if we could get one more mic and a volunteer. I know it's really cute how Seth is like running up and down the aisles.
I'm fit. I've
But
been trying to keep up
he
my
didn't work
wind
out
post
today.
the pandemic.
But so I just sent her a letter in the mail to the U.S. Supreme Court with her name on it, and it got to her, and she sent me a letter back in the mail. And Colin Powell I saw on a Wikipedia list of famous people from New York, and I thought he'd be a great interview. So I found his fan mail address online, and I sent him a letter in the mail. But
I can't believe that mail got delivered. Like that seems shocking.
They both wrote me back in the mail saying it was a sweet idea for a movie and that they had nice memories, but they didn't think they had enough to say to make it worth my while to come to DC. So I wrote them both back saying, if you just have a couple sentences to say, it would mean the world. And also, I have to go there anyways to interview Ruth Bader Ginsburg, to interview Colin Powell. So I sealed the deal in that way. I'm still, to this day, really impressed by this subject matter, that through a restaurant, it's possible to address all of those issues. And it wasn't completely effortless because we had to do the work, but it was all there naturally. And then also, I'm in awe of the people in this movie too, especially because they agreed to do this with somebody who didn't have any track record whatsoever. I was just like a random person who reached out to them, and especially with Mel, because he continues to keep giving and helping, and these people just didn't know me from Adam, and so they shared a lot.
One thing I've learned in this business, entertainment in general, is that passion wins the day beyond anything. Like when you are passionate, especially about a subject matter, people can see that. And if they themselves are emotionally connected or want to take less of a risk, their confidence in your passion and commitment to executing whatever obligation you've established, that's the thing. So it's clear why everybody said yes to you. You were like, I need to make this movie. And they were like, okay, I'll help.
And also, amazingly, the conversations that I had with all of them, they were really easy and comfortable. My mom was there with me for the Colin Powell interview, and just the way that he welcomed us into his office was just incredible. So I encountered so much kindness in the process of making this film, not only from the people in the film, but just in the past, decade of my life, telling people that I would meet, oh, what do you do? What do you do? Oh, I'm making a documentary about the Automat. Just the excitement and encouragement, because this is a topic that, it means a lot to a lot of people. So.
And it's also something that is very, there has never been any kind of celebration of it that not just talks about the mechanical innovation, but also the cultural impact of it. Who else has somebody? I can feel it. Thank you, Teddy.
Thank you. So when we first met and I asked to watch your film, you said it's a film for old people. You won't like it. and I
didn't say that.
And I loved it. And I was born the same year that the last Automat was, taken apart. So at what point in this process did you realize that you had something really special that could transcend age and race? And at what point, because it was a 7-year process, so when did you realize, wow, this film is actually beyond what I thought it would be?
I think it was probably around the time that me and my friends stopped editing it ourselves. I was working with 2 friends, and I must have just realized, like, this is just too good for us. We need some people to work with us who have a lot more experience than we do, because there's like a gem in here, and the film's not going to get proper justice. So that earlier on, I mean, we've been working on this for a really long time, but I definitely didn't see all the layers at the beginning. I think even in terms of like the social importance, I don't think it was really even until I was sitting with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, sitting with Colin Powell, that I realized that, when they said it to me, I mean, it sort of changed everything, because there's only so much kind of history that's been written about this. There's a little bit in some books, there's a PhD dissertation, but so we're kind of writing history here, and I had this growing suspicion this is a really important place. But when these really important people started telling me this was a really important place, it was really validating, and also kind of, you can't argue with that. Like, film is, we're doing something important, and I do feel, I really believe in the importance of this story. I'm not even talking about the film right now, but I think that this restaurant chain, there's so much that we can learn from it, and I feel like I just feel so lucky that this ended up being the story I got to tell.
It's really wonderful the way that you're honoring it and allowing all the people who it impacted to tell their story in their own words, like witnessing the engineers' emotional connection to all of it, and the way that everybody who worked for the company needs to tell you what a gift it was for them to work at the company. That's very meaningful.
This was a time when, I mean, it was a completely different world, obviously, but like people could afford to eat every meal out because the meals weren't, that expensive, and you could go someplace nice every single meal. And I'm not saying that that's kind of necessarily the world we need to aspire to, but it's definitely it's an interesting idea that this idea of like a safety net where like when you're hungry there's a place you can go and it's nice.
You get so complicated with any of those things, the more they become accessible to everybody, or the more that everybody desires a similarity of experience, that because of the individual liability of all these companies to both protect that experience or ensure a customer experience that is repeatable, some of the features of it are forced to become more clinical, almost like a theme park, right? So you think about a situation as simple as the Automat, where you even got the liability protection of you're essentially consenting to the experience as you walk through the door. Any version of it with health codes, I remember when the Automat was still open, they had already started wrapping things in plastic because the health codes were becoming so restrictive that no one could imagine putting a piece of unwrapped food into the same container that all other food was put through, and they weren't like sterilizing these things in between, so they had to individually wrap the food. And then you're talking about an additional labor effort of not just the expense of the plastic wrap, but somebody to hand wrap all this food after it's been prepared. And so just that addition, it's a whole nother asset to pay. It's a whole nother workforce to employ, or something that you got to add to everybody's salary. So it's tough because all of the utopian experiences that I think we all love culturally become so prohibitive just in their repeatability, right? And what people desire from the experience is almost most achievable because it's somewhat artisanal. So as soon as it starts catering to like millions of people that demand the speed of these, that's why fast food boomed so big, is because people accepted a loss of quality for the speed and cost of the experience. I wonder if you could have something like this and even figure out a way to make it viable in the same way, to cater to the same experience, but still be affordable. It's almost, I don't know if it's even possible.
What would be counterintuitive vis-a-vis that narrative, which is a question I was gonna ask, is it just seems so odd that they would put so much money into physical space, these gorgeous palatial deco structures with Carrara marble and attention to detail, to sell food that's 5 and 10 cents a piece. That doesn't require a response. What I really wanted to say was, what would this guy Daly's kid be or do without the ability to talk about this today? I mean, he clearly is on the spectrum. He clearly is obsessed with history of the Automat. And did he throw out those statistics off the top of his head, or was he reading something?
He was definitely reading something. he was reading some company numbers there.
I was hoping he just knew that. It would just be so fitting for the guy I got to know.
That's such that probably ties into like fathers and sons in general, and those ages of attempting to replicate, like get your dad's approval in one form or another. Boy, it really is an entertaining story, and I so appreciate that you chose to tell it through the eyes of all of the people that experienced it, see their love, their reverence, the ripple effect it had through all of their lives. They've each taken away some kind of deeper meaning that is similar but unique to all of them.
It was absolutely
Oh, great, we got it.
It was
One more.
absolutely incredible for me to be able to, you can pass the mic to her, to be able to sort of witness the process of telling this story and piecing all of this together and realizing that there's millions of people who share this. It completely changed my life this, I mean, this movie has been an incredible. Adventure's not even the right word, but it's become such a huge part of my life, and not only in terms of my career, but like it's changed me as a person.
I can see it. What do we got?
Sorry, I was going to, first of all, kudos with respect to all the video and the photographs you had. I was amazed how much material there was, and you're putting in these, clips from old films and everything. And I was wondering if you got all that when you said you had found a lot of the footage at the New York Public Library, right? Was that all there, or were you looking at other sources? Because there was so much. It was really, really impressive.
Thank you. I loved doing the archival research. The New York Public Library is the holy grail for the New York side of the Automat story. The Philadelphia side of the story is really kept at Temple University in their archives. Temple has the morgues for several of the city's defunct newspapers. It has the archives for the local TV stations that don't want to manage their own, film archives. And there are just, dozens of archival sources. I traveled all over the country visiting archives, emailing over the course of making the film, more and more stock footage libraries, archives were digitizing their holdings, so it became easier and easier from home to just find things from really random places. I ran ads on Facebook for people to send me their photos and film. I went into basements looking through boxes. We got the stuff from so many different sources. But yes, the New York Public Library and Temple University are like, and then John Romas, the engineer, he's another huge source, and the Daly family in Philadelphia, they're another huge source. So those are like the four main sources. But it was a lot of fun, and definitely it pushed the limits of my organizational skills, because we had hundreds and hundreds of archival elements to organize, and then ultimately that I had to license. So that was a huge, I had no idea how on earth I was going to license all that stuff, but we did, and I never thought I could do that. It was such an enormous amount of work, that kind of project. There are people who do that for a living, and it's kind of hard. It's just, that's a lot of work.
That's why the producers usually collect the Best Picture Oscar, because it starts with you. It's all on your back. You put all the pieces together, and when everybody says they like it, you're like, hey, thanks. This was incredible. Great work. I mean, it's obvious it took so much time. For real, right?